Welcome, everybody, to our Zoom interview of Jan Carson, commemorating the opening of her show, Illuminated Works at Foothills Art Center. Tonight is our members only opening reception or preview, and tomorrow it will open at 10 a.m. to the public. So I'd like to thank AARP, especially tonight, for sponsoring this series. This is going to be our last opening for Zoom, pardoning any other global disasters. We will be continuing on for the rest of the year exclusively with our in-person openings. But we will be still continue to do artist interviews and stuff and posting those on our YouTube channel. So I do highly encourage you all to go check us out on YouTube at Foothills Art Center, to follow us, and we will be any other interviews we do digital that'll be very similar to the content tonight, so oftentimes a little shorter, closer to 20-25 minutes. We will be posting those on our YouTube channel. We'll still be creating content like that and other things as well. So tonight we're going to start just with a little introduction of Jan herself, and maybe a little background on you and how you got started in art. I think that would be excellent. Jan, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself and giving us a little background on you.
Jan, for those who don't know, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio right now, but I spent 25 years in Colorado, northern Colorado, Fort Collins and Loveland. How I got started in art, I took some classes in college. I wasn't very serious about it until I graduated. Mm-hmm. And even then, I still didn't really think that's what I was going to do. I just kept making work.
What were you working on at that time? What were when you come up, like, were you 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional?
I was three. When I first got out, I was kind of more printmaking, a little spattering of everything in college. So nothing very in depth. And when I graduated, I just started sewing because that's the tool I had at hand and was comfortable with. And I was interested in anatomy and physiology. And so I was creating artworks that were kind of interpretations of that.
They were wearable, or they were referencing anatomy and physiology?
There's one, it's the very first one, the skeleton image. If you want to plug that one up there, I put one of them really, that was probably from 90.
Oh yeah, let's get into it. Let's look
or
at
something.
This.
And I liked that one because it had a quilted background and it's life size, so I'm still kind of dealing with the body. There's some common threads going on there, no pun intended.
Ha ha ha, very funny.
Yeah.
Let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so this is, wow, look at this. That is 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So is it pretty rigid?
It is. It's just, thoroughly wet, starched, dried, crunchy. It was,
yeah.
So that was between college and grad school. And then I got a couple shows, one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was from Oklahoma at the time. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, and then applied to grad school. And that's where I got accepted at Colorado State University. So I didn't have any fibers background per se. I had to take some basic weaving and surface design courses because all I'd been doing was what I knew on my own, which is kind of what you're looking at.
How did you pick up these skills to begin with?
My mom sewed clothes, and so I learned to sew from her, but I kind of would just push it a little further. And she wasn't a quilter either. That piece right there is probably one of my first quilts. I mean, and I don't really quilt. It's weird to me to look back at that and see how there's some common ties, even how the colors are spaced out.
And the base element being this kind of rectangle, I think that there's a lot of through lines to the stuff that I'm more familiar with. But the 3-dimensional like skeleton is adorable. And this is not still what you're doing, but it's fun to see. Is it it's hard to tell. Is it like a single piece of silk, or is there like something inside of it?
It's like a flat pillow. So there is some fiber fill in there,
Gotcha.
but it's the sheet type.
Right. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Okay. That's kind of what I'm seeing. That's really interesting. So where do you go from here?
Then I went to grad school.
Okay.
And the next picture that you have, the butterfly costume, that was my thesis work, one of them, and it's a newer
Wow,
photo.
everybody needs to see this.
Um, and that it was made of silk velvet that was sprayed with dye. It's supposed to be a black veined white butterfly. It's a little cryptic to see, and because she's all twisted around, but I just friend photographer took that image. He's professional, and he just really captured what I was trying to say. Just the weight of the velvet and then the lightness of the butterfly. Those two things kind of working opposite each other in the piece. So, after that, I worked retail. I worked in a little gift shop, and the owner was buying from artists around the country, and I kind of learned from her how to do production art. And so to this day, I still make mobiles that I started making 25 years ago in her little shop, and selling them in her shop, and learning kind of from other artists how they were selling their wares across the country, how to do that. And so yeah, that's my bread and butter right there.
Oh yeah. So I often talk to artists about the stuff they make that sells, and then the stuff they make that they like really want to push. And so this is what's bringing in the funding
Hmm.
for the
That has
bigger work.
supported me. Yeah.
Yeah. These are
Yeah.
beautiful. What is it? What are the
Yeah.
leaves made from?
Starch silk.
There we are. There's your through
And
line.
wire.
And
Yeah.
wire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friends just sent us something like a mobile with a similar concept, these counterbalance mobiles, and it's cool. It's a cool art form.
Yeah.
I like that. I like your color choice, and it's
Oh, that was,
it's
yeah. That was I make them in all colors. That was a custom one that I recently did. Had a nice photo, so that's the one you get.
beautiful. So so then you started on the mobiles post grad school, and then
Hmm.
what gets you into starting to take greater leaps into silk quilting, for lack of a
Yeah,
better
I
word?
I burned out basically in the mobile making, and I needed to do something for me,
Mm-hmm.
something one of a kind. With production art, you're creating the same object over and over again. And so in 20, it was probably 20, I started working on the pieces that I've moved, the textile art.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was 2016 that I showed some at Foothills the first time,
Yup.
in that group show.
That
So
was my first show
yeah.
at Foothills. That was me going from being a preparator to actually running the show on my own. And the Foothills Art Center went from a exhibition staff of 3 to an exhibition staff of myself. And and we and I
But you're still here.
and I'm still here, and I still love the work. But that the man, did I have some sleepless nights leading up to that show. So I'm glad it all went well. But yeah, your work was a real highlight of that installation.
So more or less, I was working abstractly. Same technique I'm still using today. Just lightly overlapping pieces, sewing them together in strips, turning them, cutting them over and over again, and just repetitive cycles of that to kind of mix the colors. This one in particular was all hand dyed colors,
Oh
and
wow.
just trying different things. Like, in this one, can I gradate colors? Can I change size from large to small? All that kind of thing. I actually think that's upside down.
Oh no.
And that's my fault. I don't know.
Everybody turn your computers upside down so you can see right.
But it still reads
I
well.
This one we had on display in
Yes.
2016. And
Yeah.
this one is right side up, correct?
That one is. And
Okay.
yes, that one is inspired by butterfly scales. So, I'm still kind of dealing with the same themes as I was in grad school in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
kind of saying different things. Just when you look closely, when you look far away, which are you at that point? Is this the sky? Is this a butterfly detail? Those kind of ideas were what were going on in my head when I first started creating this kind of
Interesting.
work.
It's cool when there's an overlap between what the artist is intending and what someone just sees. And what we were getting a lot of from people when they saw your work was, oh, it's got this pixelation quality. It has this digital quality to it because of the repeating squares. And there's something to that when you're talking about like the impressionistic nature of what are you seeing depending on what range, right? What range are you looking at it? When you get
Mm-hmm.
further away versus when you get close, what are you seeing? Like, that's there's like a direct tie there to that, what people were feeling in their guts about it being kind of digital or pixelated, this
And
image that makes different, go ahead.
a couple people have asked how large these pieces are.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
work pretty large, and this one is, maybe 3.5 by 4. So the little squares are maybe half an inch in this particular, and that's kind of the smallest
I'll
ish
zoom in
that
for
I've
you.
gotten. Yeah. I sew pieces together, with a zigzag stitch, which is a forgiving stitch. It's not like quilting. There's not really seams. They're just lightly overlapped and stitched together. I've got
What
some
about the
detail
zigzag
shots.
stitches forgiving? Oh, sorry. I'll pull up the details.
It's a zigzag is kind of intended to be a stretch stitch.
Okay.
Um, and I actually had to buy the machine that I use because I didn't have zigzag on my 51 Singer, which was what I'd made everything else with. So,
Oh,
but I knew I wanted to work in that way. So, yeah, this is from the season series. This was from 2017, and it's mounted on a wood panel. Um, I'm just kind of experimenting with the transitioning, squares to rectangles, colorations, can I infer landscape, and I just, this whole series was about the sky, Colorado, you just notice the sky so much and the weather
hmm.
and
Yeah, this one you almost got a horizon line in it because of what you do
Mhm.
with the different with the different shapes.
Yeah,
There's a bisection here, right? At this point, where the
yeah. I
squares change dimension.
think this one is called Winter Ground with Autumn Sky, or Autumn Sky with Winter Ground. I've always been so long, I can't remember my titles.
So the seasons, that's another, I don't have that written down here, but that's another reoccurring theme that we have in your
Hmm.
current show that we can address in a little bit. So now we're in 2017. So you're in this space where you're experimenting with different shapes and you're learning about gradation and the ways in which you can work with different colors. Were you still doing a lot of hand dyeing at this point in 2017 or?
I was starting to not, but I
Okay.
had a lot of stock to work with.
Okay.
Um,
Do you hand cut the squares and rectangles?
no, and I don't work. A lot of people ask me if I work like with mosaic technique, where I'm placing things, and it's not like that at all.
Yeah,
Um, it's
this is like a perfect segue because I really do want to talk about your tech, like your actual process, because I think a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around it. So
yeah.
go for it and explain, like, because in my mind, if I'm looking at it and I don't know any better, I'm imagining, oh, maybe she does paper mock-ups. Maybe I just imagine you like laying it out. That's, I think that's what a lot of people think. They get in that sense of like, what would I do if I had a bunch of cut pieces? I would set them down on a big table and rearrange. So actually talk about what you do.
Mm, yeah, that would be so much work to do it that way. No, I start with pretty wide strips, maybe 14 inches long or so. So maybe 2-inch strip by 14 inch long. And then I sew those together and turn them 90 degrees and cut again. So then I've got squares that are 2-inch squares. And then I'll cut those. So, mix in other colors. It really is kind of like baking bread or something and yeast dough rising, how the addition of more colors, the addition of more fabric, and depending on how I orchestrate that, I get a different effect. Um, I don't really know how to explain it better than that.
so it
Baking bread is the best.
so it grows out from like
Hmm.
one point and you continue to build on from. Do they tend to grow center out, or do you tend to start like, this is going to be the top left corner and I'm going to work, or do you not know exactly?
They no. I'm kind of working in like 2 by 2s, two
Okay.
2 feet by 2 feet squares ish, and
Okay.
then I will, when I know I'm getting close to where I want it to be, I'll start sewing those together to make longer pieces. So when I'm getting close to the end, I'm working with maybe 4 feet long strips, um, and that way. So it doesn't grow from one place. It grows from all over. I have
Hmm.
another, I don't know if it would show very well. There's some sewing photos
Okay,
with the
let's
sewing machine.
I see these ones labeled construction.
Mhm.
Are those ones you want to pull up? I got it.
Mhm.
One sec here.
Maybe something like that. I don't know if it'll help people or not, but
Well, it'll give us something to show them while we.
yeah, so here I'm sewing strips together to make really long, like, an endless strip, and then I will take those and decide how long I want my piece to be, say 4 feet, and then I'll just sew next to each other for 4 feet, cut, 4 feet, cut, and then I can start, cutting it the opposite way, adding in other colors. And I don't draw things out. I don't have a plan really for how it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna, you just can't plan with this kind of process. I can decide what colors to use. I can decide what kind of shapes, do I want them to be kind of long triangles or do I want them to be squares? I can do that much, but there's no possible way to say that I want a small little pink square in this body of mostly yellow. That just happens accidentally ish, organically. It's not
There
something
you
I'm
go.
really
That's the word we
controlling.
use. We say
Yeah.
we say intuitively or organically, naturally. It
Yeah.
evolves as a result of the muse comes through the
Well, it's
process.
accidental. It's random. It's kind
It's
of random.
no,
Hmm.
I was just being silly
Yeah.
about the language that artists use
Oh,
when they truly mean accidental, or I just let the process guide the way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's
right.
process driven art is fascinating because there's
Right.
still you're making micro decisions all the while. You just
Hmm.
don't have like a grand plan to start, and that's fine because I'll tell you,
Right.
if you didn't have any skill or eye for what you were doing, all the process in the world isn't going to like lend you to a great work, and it doesn't like give you great
Mm-mm.
work for free. So there's no reason to think that like letting the process be the guide is somehow, I don't know, a problem. You don't have to come up with different words for it. I was just being silly. But the other one.
Someone's asking about raveling. Silk doesn't really ravel. Silk is not like cotton. Cotton, I've done this same technique in cotton and it's just a lint fest. Silk,
Wait,
because if it's an animal fiber, it holds. I mean, it does. I get some threads. You'll see that if you go see the work in person, but it's nothing like other fabrics. It's the best fabric to work with.
what's raveling versus unraveling? I know what unraveling means. What does raveling mean?
Well, maybe unraveling is what she meant, but
Oh, okay. Except I thought I was I so what she means is then just the deterioration of the fabric at the edges, right?
hmm
Like if you
where it's
so like
cut. Yeah.
okay, yeah, like if you have a loose edge of a t-shirt or something and it
Hmm.
frays out and okay, got you. You're right, because you're not doing much except for the stitching, you're not doing any sort of special treatment to the edges of the squares. They
No,
are
I'm handling them carefully enough that, I'm not rubbing them against anything. I'm just pretty careful with the way I work, so it's not an issue too much. Certain fabrics might give me a problem, but for the most part, and this is silk taffeta, which is kind of a coarser, heavier weight, and that helps too.
interesting. So, transitioning from this process being whoa, oh, here we go.
I don't know that word.
Aleatoric is another word that I'm gonna Google after. or um, so going from process leading the way, this repetitive sewing, cutting, rotating. I remember in your artist statement for the show, you talk about that process being inherent in the work and it kind of mirroring your you gaining understanding of the artwork as it's created and also the understanding of what the work is about.
Hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about how your process for creating the work ties directly into
The
what it
work.
is the work is themed around?
Yeah, I think it's about control. I think when I'm working in this way, I don't know where I'm going. Um, I might have an idea about a feeling or, I have some kind of amorphous ideas, but there's nothing specific. And to me, that kind of mirrors life itself, that and especially with the work for this show, the level of control is a big issue. And I'm probably not answering your question too well, but that
No, no, I think there's something there. Keep going.
um
Or
yeah.
I can help. I
Well,
think that.
so
Oh, go
each
ahead.
time I'm sorry to talk over you. I didn't mean
No,
to.
it's fine. It's Zoom. That's what Zoom's all about, is talking over people. It's impossible not to.
At each step, I have to make a decision. With you start out with simple decisions, and then you work towards more complex decisions. And um, so a lot of times I get a really, a nice piece of fabric, and I decide I'm going to cut a big swatch in it. And I just go because I can't protect it. It just seems like all of these things that are going on in my life or my head kind of get mirrored out on the fabric. And I just I take it out on that. It's like I take the risk there. Um,
Ah, okay. Do you find yourself, without getting too psychoanalytical, do you find do you find yourself in your day-to-day life outside of creating art being the one who likes to have control over the minutia,
oh,
over. Yes?
oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Okay,
like
so
things.
big
I mean,
yes.
even my studio is very organized. Um, yeah, I like my rituals. I have my habits. Same breakfast, those kinds of things.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I
To me, it
think, and
makes you a
and
great
even
professional.
in this picture, you can see, I mean, how the stack of little, the stack of strips is like perfectly stacked. There's that kind of thing going on.
Yeah. So you channel this energy of requiring control and needing organization and process, and then there's something inherent about there. You do have to give it up though, because you don't get to make a plan in the beginning here, so you get
Hmm.
to take all of that. You get to test yourself and almost push your boundaries of comfort in the creation of the work, and let some of the things that don't get to come out in the day to day
Yep.
in the artwork.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
What better use for art is there than that, right? Than allowing you to get to stretch the muscles that you don't get to, that your mind, right, maybe your like type A personality doesn't let you do otherwise. They're the
And
ways
it,
you want your life to be, and then you get your art to do, to try something different.
well, and then you get to look at it. It's a self-reflection too. You
Yeah.
that I enjoy too. It's like, well, what would happen to this figure if I cut its arm off, or whatever. It's just it's like what a lot of what ifs. I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of deep questions about life and being and purpose and spirituality. All of that goes through my head. And so to be able to look at that in a physical form outside of myself, in a psychological way, especially with this most recent work,
Hmm.
that's really helpful. And that's the reward for me that I get.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think in so many words you're describing what probably a lot of artists go through,
Mm,
regardless of whether or not their work is process
yes.
driven. You're finding respite in the creation of artwork and getting to do things and experiment, and then, like you just said, and then you get to look at it, you get a final product, you get some sort of visual feedback on all that you've done,
Yeah.
which is kind of like the crucial last step in the assessment. And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. And when you're
um,
working with like unconscious ideas,
mhm.
then it's even more interesting. It's like, because so many of the works that I make for this show, I would make them and I would say, what am I doing?
Yeah.
What is this about? Because I mean, a lot of them to me kind of seem like they might be disturbing or frustrating and I'm not, I don't think I'm feeling that way in my day to day life.
um but the next question I had for you was something that came up when we were putting together your statement for the context panel, which was this idea of, so much of what you know about the work and what the show is about, you're like discovering all the while as the work is created, rather than knowing ahead of time. I'm going to make artwork about X, therefore these are my symbols. This will be the way in which I put things together, and having that the precognitive, right? You're very much learning it. You're learning what the show is about by making the show.
It's
And
kind of
that's
like
interesting.
dream interpretation.
Sure.
That's how it feels to me. Like this piece that you're showing, this is Departure. Someone
Eh,
asked how big this is.
yeah, yeah.
40, 43 by, I mean, it's like 40 something by 50 something. It's pretty big. It's the figure, every time you see the figure, it's life size. And I'm kind of small, but it's life size. So that might give people a little scale idea.
Oh, okay. And you're
Um,
5'3".
5'3". Yeah.
Right on.
But yes, exactly. I'll make the work and then decide what it's about. It's not like, and the decisions for this piece, okay, I start with the colors. I get the figure has the larger shapes. I
Hmm.
cut the figure out and then I start working the background, which turns into smaller shapes. And then I put them together. And then it's like, okay, what next? And you look at that and I just, I knew that I wanted to do this heart with these wasps, bees, whatever they are coming out of it. And it's not,
Oh, they're bees?
they're wasps, I think. For me, they're probably
Oh,
wasps.
wow. I always thought they were tiny birds. Oh,
Oh,
I like
see
them
what you want to
better
see
as
in it.
I like them better as wasps. I think that's more interesting. This is Sherry, who is our she's our finance director. She says she can't look at this work too long without crying. I thought you'd like to hear that.
I would like to hear that.
I
Hmm.
think there's something really, really potent in here. And she's an empathetic person, to say the least, but she's sensing something in this work. So this one
That's
is
awesome.
certainly powerful. Is this our title piece? Is this the one on the postcard?
Departure. No, the title piece was not at one with. This is, but you
Oh,
have
okay.
used this. This is Departure.
Oh, okay. Got you. I know where this is in the show. We can
Mhm.
actually let's pull up so you can see it on the left there.
It's a little stretch, looks like. It's not that
Yeah,
rectangular, but
it's this is a wide angle shot, so I could get the whole room in there. But you can at least get an idea of what these look like in real life. So, as you go through the process of learning about what the show is going to be about as you're creating it, talking about dream interpretation, I think a lot of what you were talking about in your process reminds me of free association writing, where you kind of
hmm,
just let your mind go and you just
yeah.
start scribbling and seeing what comes out. And then eventually we start to see images or themes in the writing. So, what are some of the things that started to bubble up as the show started to come together?
Definitely, I feel like the figure is altered kind of in a way that mirrors emotion. Um, they're either falling or broken or dissected. The figure is kind of bearing the brunt of the emotion that I'm feeling. Um, like the white one on the right there, kind of invisible. The one on the left, is fragmented, broken. This one, they're just they kind of run the gamut of pain. um, painful to me, kind of when I look at it, but at the same time,
Pain
it
in
just
all its specific, detailed ways. It's
it's like
different flavors.
psychological pain.
Okay.
Or at first I was wanting to describe these as psychological narratives because they each do kind of have their own story that you could come up with. Why is this figure in this predicament or in this position? And then there's also just the like a lot of them are just facing you very solemnly. Maybe in the action of walking towards you. That one, of course, is broken and falling. Um,
I
so I
could
think
try and pull up.
they're like visual storage stories.
Yeah. So there's this narrative of different sorts of psychological trauma. Is trauma the word? Or
Effect,
it, effect?
just
Psychological
effect. I mean, the effect
effects?
of
Yeah.
living. Just
Sure.
and I've been reading. I read for fun, kind of layman's philosophy, layman's physics. I'm really curious about actually I was really curious about what's real, what's true, what the world is made of, how our bodies work, all of that. And I think at the same time that I'm making these pieces, I've kind of just all of that is kind of disintegrated. Um, and I'm just kind of throwing up my hands. It's just like I don't know anymore. It's just
Oh, it's like
so
that.
there's some frustration, like especially this one, the
Sure.
right, the moon. Just your head's floating. It's gone. It's just cannot grasp. I don't think we can grasp. The
Are
kinds of
these
things that I
arms
want to grasp.
are these
Yeah.
arms reaching to try and get a hold, or are they like, is it a chest
E-
pass? Is it
Either
tossing
way,
the head? It could be either way.
it's both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you could read this. I think it's kind of like a glass half full, glass half empty question. Like, it would be funny to ask people, which direction is the head flying? And then maybe, or maybe just say like, what's the head doing? And some people
Hmm.
might say, oh, this person's catching it, or this person's throwing it away. This person's reaching for it. It's just floating there, and the person is
Yeah.
praising it. There's so many
Yeah.
different things you could read. You could read into it.
Yeah.
I
Praise.
think it reminds me of that paradox. Like the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing,
Yes, exactly.
and there's an
Exactly.
exasperation that comes with that.
Hmm.
It takes time, I think, to settle into the idea that you're never going to wrap your head around all of it,
Yeah.
especially if you're chasing for truth. You're
Right.
like in the
Or what's
quest.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, what's real, the quest for the epistemological end goal. What
Hmm.
is it all made of? Why? And then you start asking the harder questions after what? The why, questions get even harder. Um,
When I have to tell you this, when I was looking for a college major for
uh-huh.
undergrad, I was talking to my brother. He was going through the book. There's the book back then that you could look at majors. And he's like, well, what about this? What about that? No, no. He was like, well, what about philosophy? He's like, well, what's philosophy? And he said, what is the meaning of life? I was like, yes, that's it. That's the one. That's the one I want.
You mean there's somebody that can tell me?
Exactly. I thought that you could. No. So this one
Yeah.
on the left here, with
Uh-huh.
the blue figure at the bottom. I don't know if you can find the full shot of that one. It's about more like missing the point or not seeing what's going on or um, not listening to your inner voice or whatever. And that's
Oh,
part of it too.
fascinating. So these little birds, they're birds this time, right? They're not.
Those are birds.
Okay, it's not wasps.
Those are falling birds.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, they're falling?
they're falling.
Oh, yes, they are. I see that now. And this is about missed opportunities?
I think for me, I would like it to mean whatever it needs to for everyone. But
Sure.
for me personally, it's about not listening to your inner voice or to your truth, your own truth, or you know, just not aware, um, missing the
Interesting.
point. You know.
Yeah. There's definitely something to the idea of being outside of yourself all the time and like never taking a beat to look inwards about what's actually occurring in the moment. And you can kind of just go from thought to thought to stimulus to stimulus, and it's never been easier than it is in 2021, right? And
And
you
I
can miss a lot of those things.
yes, and intentionally they're of the same fabric. The person and the birds, it's the same fabric. It's the
Ah.
same whatever. In this abstract environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's some component there that's important too.
And
Like
just
why.
technically, again, we have that strong horizon line like we did when you were first experimenting in that
Mhm,
other one that we looked at, that one where somebody had said it read like aspen trees, the one of
mm,
the seasons one. I love the overlapping too. Another like just technical thing to point out is I remember saying this back when you first showed me this piece. I just think that the overlapping in the birds is so fascinating, and it gives them such motion because you can
mhm.
get that great contrasting between the darker blue and the lighter blue, the difference between multi-layer and one layer.
Yeah, they're all cut flat. They're just folded differently and then appliqued to give them that
Okay.
kind of shape.
So
But
they're
they're all the
all
same shape.
That's cool. And that's a great trick for keeping them identical sizes. You
Mm,
get a little bit of realism in there, because if you were going to make all these birds, like if you were going to design the pose and try and cut the pose without having the same bird to start with, you could, then they're like going to be slightly different sizes. This is great. I like that as a trick because it makes them all identical, but you can pose them however you please. It's like more like sculpture than it is like 2D rendering.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of common with my way of thinking. I do think I think sculpturally, and I do think that I work with fabric as an object and an item instead of as a like a paint. I don't think in terms of painting. I think in terms of pieces that fit together. And I feel like that shows in the work.
Yeah, I think the more you look for it, the more you see the decisions being influenced in that way. That's your thought pattern. Let's look at some of the other works from the show. Is there another piece you'd like me to pull up to talk about specifically? Quite tempestuous piece
Mm,
entitled Whirlwind. And we have here some curves that stand out. These arcing lines across the work in the space especially really make this work stand out. Not only that, but you also have like a larger piece of negative space that isn't typical in some of the other works where the background is very flat in this one compared to the more particularized ones. Mara would like to
right.
know more about the illuminated aspect of the work. So maybe before we get into this work specific, we can talk about when you started lighting them and why.
Yeah. Um, the backlighting happened just because as I was making the older works, I would hold them up and notice that the seams would make dark lines, and I wanted to emphasize that for some reason. But then as I started making more work with that, just kind of messing around, I realized that the light was there for more of a spiritual reason that I hadn't anticipated. Um, so the first piece I made in that way, I made for the arrow competition. It's in conjunction with a festival called Cherry Creek Arts Festival in Denver, and they pay you to make a piece that's kind of innovative in one way or another. And so I pitched this idea of backlighting my textile work, and got got the opportunity to do that. So then I got to work with light boxes, and I that's why all of these pieces now in the show are on light boxes. There's something about this frustration with reality, all of the things we've been talking about psychologically, and putting them on a light box, how those things work together. Light is kind of symbolic of nature or information or spiritual things, the universe, whatever power, greater power you want to think of. Combining that with the frustration I feel as a human being and everything you go through kind of solidified for me my feelings right now. Is
Okay.
that making sense?
So yeah, I think the light is the unifying variable.
Mhm.
Regardless of what else is going on in any individual work, the light gets to be this thing that like it's always on, it's always overhead regardless of what's going on earth. Light is this overwhelming kind of the thing up above that is always there, and it's in all the work, so it keeps them all tied together.
And in the
That's
works, it's amplifying what's going on. It's giving you the lines
uh-huh.
of the seams, and it's really making the colors more vivid than they are when the work is not lit. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
just
love
glowing.
showing it to people off and on
Yeah.
because it oh what
Yeah,
like when
it's
you
so
click, it's
different.
really a wow moment.
Mhm.
So if you guys come into the gallery, you can make the person at the front desk click them on and off for you. If it's not a busy day, they'll come and do that because I do highly recommend seeing the difference and seeing that moment of it click. Like we talked about in the future, it would be wonderful to have like timers or something where they could
Mhm.
actually switch on and off or fade in and out. I think would be cool to see.
Yeah, I like the fading idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
that
see.
would maybe someday. It's not a terribly difficult thing to set up, but one day that will be interesting. So yeah, yeah, we were talking about the light in your artist statement also. Trying to remember, there was something about, can you help me remember about the light boxes? And there's something about being bound within
Mhm.
the context of the box.
Right.
And Yeah,
Right.
go for
Um,
what was that concept? Do you
Part
recall?
of my thought process is, what am I self-creating? What what concepts, what beliefs have I created for myself? And so the whole idea of this box with the light in it is kind of like, is this my limitation? Um, oh, how else do I put that? It's a really hard concept to get across, which is part of why we went back and forth so long with my statement to wheedle it down.
But this is the interesting part. Maybe you don't get an answer, like a perfect answer, but there's if you're gonna have a heady show like this, it's fun to just, knock it back and forth. I had a great time over that. Trying to figure out what on earth this show is really about. But there are so many cool concepts in there, and because my next question was going to be about, can you talk about these reoccurring symbols in the
Mm,
show? But there's no more reoccurring symbol than the light itself. So we can start from there, and the light, like you said, the light is constrained, and but it changes the
yeah.
way in which you can look at this thing. So you've gone through a process to interpret, like you were saying, you interpret a dream, and then we shine the light through it, and then it all becomes more evident, and then we can analyze together what it is we're looking at, audience and you, or you can do it on your own and we can talk about it.
Well,
That becomes part of the process.
it also becomes, artificial. It's a light box. You
True.
know, it's a
Sure.
man-made, it's a man-made thing. And so in terms of, if we're talking about beliefs and a man-made box, that's kind of what I'm wrestling with is like, did I create these ideas? And, I can't really
Okay.
say it a different way. And that's why I was glad to have the chords to the boxes be so prominent. We didn't try to hide the chords in the show.
I'm going to go back and grab a photo of my naturalistic treatment
Yeah.
of the chords, which
Because, and the
already
whole
have gotten
story,
comments from my coworkers thinking I was being lazy.
lazy. Oh
Yeah.
no,
But
artist asked for that.
there's something there. There's something there to discuss in terms of the treatment, right? Of the
Hmm. Hmm.
just
Well,
here, I'm
and
going
the
to
other
share a
aspect
picture
I
here.
think you're wanting me to state is that the story of whatever's going on with the figure is limited by the boundary of the box too. You
That was
don't
what I was looking for. That's what I was
you
trying
don't
to
know the
remember.
full story. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. You get to only see what you're shown. You don't get the whole story. And that's part of what the bounding creates, the box itself. Yeah. So here's an image of the installation of the seasonal work observer series, and trying to not, in the past when we've had chords exposed at Foothills, I've tried to lean in and treat them kind of like traces on a PCB, on a circuit board,
Mm,
and make them all
mm-mm.
very rigid and right angle and parallel. And I'm like, if they're going to see the lines, let's just make this kind of technological aesthetic here. And then Jan asks to make the chords look a little bit more natural, a little bit more draped. So there are some points in which they're affixed to the wall, but only so many as to prevent people from tripping if they were to get pulled away. For the most of it, I tried to get the kinks out and keep them kind of natural and draping. So this leans into the light boxes are artificial, and there's something inherent in that you want people to know that these are not windows. This is not the sun. This is a man-made illumination. And what
Mhm.
does that mean for the way in which we look at and interpret the work? That's fascinating to me. There's just a lot of layers, because I could have easily skipped over that. I could have easily been like, well, how else was she going to light it? Who cares if it's artificial? The light itself is the symbol, but man-made light is something other than. It's another step deeper, and it has a significance to the work.
Should we go to questions? It's kind of
Sure.
getting.
Yeah, we're getting late here. We got only about 5 minutes left in our original plan, so we've been asking questions. We've been answering questions all the while. But if there's anybody who's been holding on to a question and they want to fire off a question in the chat, let's go for it. Jen and I have been, specifically me, has been babbling plenty. Why don't you guys give us a little bit more direction? Go ahead and fire off a question here in the last, we can take, depending on how many questions we get, can take the last 5 minutes here and try and answer anything. If there's any images, also requests people would like to see, if you want to see more photos of the installation, if you'd like to see some other images of work installed in the show, I'd be happy to pull those up. I think we only looked at 2 or 3. In the meantime, I'll grab, can you run through the images of the pieces in the show? I can do my best with that. If I start here, we're not gonna have them all, but we'll show you quite a few, Mara. I can also go through all my photos of the installation. You won't get to see them
Yeah, it
straight.
says, do you sell your work? Yeah. Yeah, I sell my work. This
It's
is
for
kind of
sale in
new,
Foothills.
the light box stuff. They're all priced at the show. I would do commissions too, depending, but it's probably better if I just kind of make what's in my head. I think I make better work when I do that way. But that
I'm
one's
just
called Descent
Yeah,
when you're showing.
I'm just gonna click through these at a rate.
This is called Eternal.
Love this one. This one is really bright too, with all the white silk.
Hmm.
Was this a process in that one?
Yeah,
Oh,
that was the
detail.
cutout. This is
Oh,
messages. Like that. Not at one with.
what are the
There's
butterflies
15.
about? There's
Butterflies
50.
are just kind of recurring symbol for me, and then they're
Yeah.
everlasting life, or eternal, they're that kind of symbology. Also for me, delicate, they're about delicate things.
Mm-hmm.
This is Observer series. This is the summer one, and these were a reinterpretation of Jasper Johns' The Seasons paintings, and that's where I first started using the figure.
Oh, these are the first works with the figure. Okay, that's
Mhm,
good to know.
mhm.
Do you do? Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I forget that question. Wait, maybe not. Hold on. Oh no, okay, they are different silhouettes. They're not all the same silhouette
Nope.
recut. These are different.
But
Okay.
but I did use these same silhouettes in the works that are in the other works that are in the show, especially the third one and the first one, but mostly the third one. Winter, spring.
I love looking at the details of the weather. Oh,
So this
what's
is
this?
Jasper Johns on the left, and this is
Oh,
my
okay.
work on the right.
Okay.
And so the snow, are actual holes cut into my work. He's got bricks behind his figure, and I just put them on the other side. And my works were more about like what's happening with the climate, all that. That's kind of what was going on in 2017. So in my life, there were lots of wildfires that year. There still are.
Flippin has a great question. How important is it that we recognize the figure as a self-portrait? Silhouette could read as human generally, but you're very specific with the use of self, scale, proportion to you, etc.
Yeah. I tried working with a different shadow shape after the seasons was over, and it didn't work for me. It didn't resonate. It was really hard to create the work. I would stumble once I got to that figure. I used a friend of mine's figure. It was a male figure, and it was just difficult. So that's why for this show, I continued on with the self, and I for a long time would deny that it was a self-portrait, because I don't think they're self-portraits. I think they're portraits of the human mind, or what it's like to be here or whatever. And so yeah, I'm using myself because it's accessible. um but I don't think that I think that everyone can find something in the images that they could relate to as a being on earth, and that's part of why I don't think of them as self-portraits.
Sandy asked if to see some pieces that aren't in the show. The last 2 here, these more
Yeah,
geometric ones, are
this blue
not
one
in the show.
here was the one I mentioned. This was the first Lightbox one I did for the
Okay.
Arrow Award. And then the
Oh,
next one
cool.
is just another one.
Is this one backlit
Sorry,
also?
Yes, yes.
So there you are, Sandy. There's some works that aren't in the show. This one as well. I remember this one from early on.
That's part of a large 15-foot long work called The Screaming Dreams of Flowers. And it was about pollinator demise. There's that.
Whoa. Is that somewhere we can see it?
It's actually in the Loveland Civic Center building now. Loveland bought it.
There you
But
go.
this
The answer
picture
is
was
yes.
from Artworks. Yep.
Let's keep going through here.
Older work. That's from the season series. An
Cool.
idea of scale there.
Oh yeah, we looked at this one earlier. I think we're getting back into the
Yeah,
ones.
you're into the older stuff.
Taking the time, Jan, especially. I know it's getting pretty late for you. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, I want to thank Foothills for hosting the show, for inviting me to show. It was a real challenge, but really a lot of growth happened. So I'm grateful for that.
You really knocked it out of the park. It's consistency, conceptually, it's all there. It's really, really great. And like I said, getting to show the work in. Oh, there's a question by hold on. Oh, sorry, I missed that one. Thank you, Nikki. Do you dye your own silk? And are these works all a single layer thick, or do they have a backing? Thank you, Nikki, for helping me catch that.
They're all a single layer thick. And most of these works have hand dyed in them. I'm starting to transition to not, just because of environmental reasons, health reasons. I'm not dyeing fabric anymore. But I did use a lot of my stock of hand dyed stuff for works in this show. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I can't encourage you guys enough to come see this show in real life. I'm just scrolling through the photos of the installation right now. It really did install well. It fit in the space perfectly. I'm just really, really happy. Ha 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 ha, Sandy with the killer pun. So I do encourage you guys all to come around.
Yeah, you don't have a figure. There we go. This is what I was looking for. The black one and the white one facing each other.
These are,
Broken Cycles.
Yep. Go ahead if you want
I
to
was
talk.
just going to say the titles.
Oh.
Yeah, and Eternal. Those two are facing each other, having a conversation.
Yeah, if you know Foothills, this is a long, narrow room we call the kiln room. It's actually the first room you come into as you enter the show. This black one, Broken Cycles, will be on your left, and the white one, Eternal, is on your right-hand side. This railing you can see in the photo here is a ramp up entering the show. So these are the first two pieces you see. I'm a big fan of the black one. Did we talk about, did I tell you about the record that I see this like record in it? Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's intentional. It's
okay.
Yeah. The impression of a large cycle, a large circle, broken cycles. And it's meant to kind of, not spacey, but, universal star, it's kind of got that feel to it.
Sure. Like rings around an orbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, yes, thank you. Let's wrap it up. I just thank you guys all for coming. We had a fair number of people. Hopefully I'll look back at the recording and see what we topped out at. So thank you guys all for taking the time. This will be going up on YouTube should anybody want to reference it. And I hope to see you guys all come in real life, anybody who lives close enough to do so. Jan, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Again, my name is Eric Hockley. I'm the curator at the Foothills Art Center. If you guys have any questions or want to just talk about art, come see me, email me, whatever. And Jan, you're the best. Tremendous work and congratulations on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came. Enjoy.
Oh wait, how, where, when, how much? For the show itself? It's free to enter. It's open now. It closes early in October.
October 10th.
October 10th?
Yep.
And Foothills Art Center is free to the public. It opens tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Tonight is the members only preview, but tomorrow morning it will be open, and we're open on the weekends, Saturday 10 to 5, Sunday 12 to 5, and we're open, I believe it's every day right now, but Wednesday is the day we're closed for cleaning. So yeah, everybody have a wonderful evening, and thanks again for coming. Thank you, AARP, for your support. And like I said, come follow us on YouTube for more interviews just like this. Good night, everybody.
Bye.